I'm John Heilemann.
And I'm Mark Halperin. And with all due respect to the traditional sweepstakes etiquette, that escalated quickly. Hello from Washington, D.C. on this very newsy Wednesday. After Donald Trump's 5-state conquest last night, he and Ted Cruz spent today dueling for total media domination. Trump gave a major speech on foreign policy here inside the Beltway, complete with teleprompter. Following that up with a rally featuring a new Trump endorser, legendary chair-throwing basketball coach Bobby Knight in Indiana. But today, Cruz held his own in the news competition wars. In Indianapolis late this afternoon, the Texas senator short-circuited the sweepstakes process by naming Carly Fiorina, the former Republican presidential candidate, as his running mate.
After a great deal of time and thought, after a great deal of consideration and prayer, I have come to the conclusion that if I am nominated to be President of the United States, that I will run on a ticket with my vice presidential nominee, Carly Fiorina.
Fiorina also spoke after being introduced. She took a shot at the Republican frontrunner, her once and now current rival, Donald J. Trump billionaire.
Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, they are two sides of the same coin. They're both liberal, we know that. But, you know, Hillary Clinton, like so many politicians, Hillary Clinton has made her millions selling access and influence from inside the system. And Donald Trump has made his billions buying people like Hillary Clinton.
So what does Donald Trump himself think of this pick? He gave the planet a pre-buttal window into his thinking this morning, more than 9 hours before Cruz made the formal announcement as rumors swirled. The billionaire was making his sleepy voice victory lap phone calls into some morning shows, and he reacted to the possibility of Fiorina being added to the ticket on ABC's Good Morning America.
I think it would be a bad choice. I mean, Carly did not resonate. Not because she's a woman, but Carly did not resonate at all with people. Carly's not going to do the trick. I like Carly. She's a nice person, but she never resonated. She didn't do well. She was very low in the polls, and by the end, she was an insignificant player. So if he wants to bring Carly back, that's okay, but it's not the right person.
Following the Fiorina announcement, Donald Trump's son Eric, shortly a while ago, tweeted the following, quote, "This is truly one of the greatest acts of desperation I have ever seen." Eric Trump's not the only one saying that. So, John Heilemann, was this a good move for Cruz to name Fiorina, and was it well executed?
I have seen a lot of desperate acts in my time because I work in journalism, but that's pretty desperate. It's a desperate act of a desperate campaign. We said previously that the alliance between Trump and between Cruz and Kasich was desperate. This is like double dog desperate, and I think it gives off a whiff of weakness. To the extent that it changes the conversation a little bit from Trump's big wins last night, it might be useful in this very, very, very short term. But I don't think that Carly Fiorina is going to help Ted Cruz one iota win the vote in Indiana next week, which is what he needs to do.
The press, as represented by you, is very skeptical of this. They say this is just desperate, it's gimmicky, the guy's not the nominee, why is he naming a running mate? I think that Fiorina has the potential, with a little bit of alchemy, the two of them get along, to go out there and try to help him win Indiana. This is now a stage by stage thing. Republicans have to get through this next stage if they want to stop Trump, which means Cruz has to win Indiana. I think she's an aggressive campaigner. She could help with female voters perhaps around Indianapolis. I think the press will say this is a negative net because it looks desperate. I think it's a net positive. I don't think it'll help much. Remember, the reason you pick a running mate normally is to prove that you have good judgment. You pick someone ready to be president. Yeah. A lot of Republicans will say she's ready to be president, but Trump will attack this mercilessly. And I think Cruz is going to have the main challenge for Cruz is to prove he can dominate the conversation. He'll dominate it today with this gimmicky pick. Can he continue to dominate it for the next 5 with her help?
Most of the things that Trump has pointed out that are wrong with Carly Fiorina, putting aside the things he said earlier in the campaign about her looks, in these more recent days, about the fact that she did not resonate with Republican voters, that she was not a successful candidate, the notion that she just did not get anything done as a presidential candidate suggests that like the help she's going to give with actual voters is minimal. I think that running mates, I know the bell just went off, but running mates for actual presidential candidates who are actual running mates, I don't think do that much for the top of the ticket. The top of the ticket is what you vote for.
Yeah, since you ran over, I'll keep.
It's
I'll
hypothetical. This is a hypothetical running mate, a hypothetical situation.
I'll say one more thing. This would have helped more if they kept it a surprise. This has been the worst kept secret in Republican politics now for several days. They acknowledged publicly she was being vetted. If they had done this as a huge gee whiz surprise, it would have been a much bigger deal. So I fault them for that part of the execution. I don't know what that was about.
Gets him nothing. All right. At the Mayflower Hotel today, here in Washington, D.C., Donald J. Trump, billionaire, gave a speech very different tone, tenor, and tempo than his typical exercises in oratorical excess. The Republican frontrunner was relatively tame and thoroughly wedded to his teleprompter as he talked about his vision for American engagement in the world, describing in very broad strokes how a Trump administration might handle some of the world's troubled areas and the U.S.'s toughest adversaries.
I'd like to talk today about how to develop a new foreign policy direction for our country, one that replaces randomness with purpose, ideology with strategy, and chaos with peace. It's time to shake the rust off America's foreign policy. It's time to invite new voices and new visions into the fold. America First will be the major and overriding theme of my administration. Under a Trump administration, no American citizen will ever again feel that their needs come second to the citizens of a foreign country. I will view, as president, the world through the clear lens of American interests. I will be America's greatest defender and most loyal champion. We will not apologize for becoming successful again, but will instead embrace the unique heritage that makes us who we are.
There are a lot of reactions to this speech, which we'll talk about next, but it's no surprise that one of the harshest critiques came from Ted Cruz's campaign, which sent out a press release blasting one of Trump's new advisors and huge advisor, Paul Manafort, after claiming that Trump, quote, fails the presidential test, end quote. The Cruz statement continues, quote, he must fully identify the role and involvement of Mr. Manafort, who is widely recognized for his entanglements with corrupt foreign regimes and anti-democratic rulers, end quote again. So Mark, my question to you, in terms of policy and politics, how do you rate the Trump big foreign policy speech?
The haters hate it. They say it's not specific, it's inconsistent, it's not distinctive. Look, if you took Trump's name off of it and just showed the speech, it was well organized, it was well delivered. It gave you a sense of how Trump's foreign policy would differ not just from the current Democratic administration, but from a lot of Republican orthodoxy. I thought it was just fine in presentation and delivery. And I think in terms of policy, again, take away the hatred of Trump and the belief that Trump's a fake and a phony that a lot of people have. A lot of the things he's talking about would, if he executed them, reorient American policy more in line with what a lot of people in the public would like our policies to be. So I thought it was perfectly good. Compared to a Hillary Clinton foreign policy speech or a George Bush foreign policy speech.
Oh, come on. Hillary Clinton as a candidate. Hillary Clinton as a candidate has given extraordinarily detailed, articulate foreign policy speeches, which we have praised on this show for their degree of rigor and their degree of knowledge of the world. This speech had none of that. It was, to my mind, maybe a speech that you would give someone a pass on who was a Republican candidate a year ago. A candidate who's standing on the brink of winning the Republican nomination, who expressed basically a bunch of bromides and didn't say anything with any specificity, as you acknowledge. Like, I don't have any idea beyond general platitudes and general principles. I have no idea how to apply those principles. In some cases, he sounds interventionist. In some, he sounds restrained. He talks about how he's going to get rid of ISIS with the stroke of a pen. He's got a secret plan to do that, but he won't tell you what it is. How can I possibly judge his argument? Well, we can have I guarantee you I can find you. I'm not Hillary Clinton's foreign policy advisor, but I guarantee you I can find you 3 paragraphs in about 2 minutes on this machine that would give more specificity and detail to answer that question than you can find in anything Donald Trump said in this speech.
It's late to be giving his first foreign policy speech, but for a first foreign policy speech, it was no less specific than a lot of
There's nothing the man said today that made me think he was qualified to be commander-in-chief in that speech. Nothing.
Donald Trump's speech today got, as you heard here just now, mixed reviews across the political world. Some people, like Senator Bob Corker, the Republican chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, praised his party's frontrunner, calling the remarks, quote, an important step the tone of the presidential race. Others were not so nice. Trump got his share of bipartisan panning from the right and the left, joining together in anti-Trump harmony, criticizing both the substance of his speech and his style. Former Republican presidential candidate, the senator from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, tweeted, quote, "Question number one for Trump, are we sure the guy running the teleprompter has the pages in the right order? Hashtag not making any sense." Dan Pfeiffer, former advisor to President Obama, chimed in with, quote, on Twitter, "This wholly unserious human being is going to be one of two people who might lead our country. Don't laugh, people. Go knock some doors." So, John, a lot of negative reaction. I don't mean to overstate how good it was, but what does the strong reaction, often similar from the left and the right, say about what Trump is going to face, not just on foreign policy, but as attacks in general, if he's the nominee through November? A
lot of skepticism on a lot of fronts. I mean, one of the things about Trump is that he's unusual in this regard. He is that normally a presidential candidate, Hillary Clinton gives a speech, the left more or less likes it, the right more or less attacks it. Donald Trump is disliked by many members of his own party and certainly by many members of the establishment, and that is basically what comprises people who have the credibility and standing to talk about foreign policy. So he's going to hear a lot of criticism when it comes to things, especially in these areas, from people in his own party. Yeah. That's going to be what he faces throughout this race.
No major party nominee has ever faced the double-barreled criticism he's going to face, because a lot of it's going to be reflexive. Are there weaknesses in the speech? Of course. Right. Are there things in the speech that are inconsistent? Of course. Does it lack specifics? Of course. But again, would it normally a speech like this normally face this kind of pounding from both sides? No, it would not. Trump, I think, is underestimating the extent to which he's going to need to have allies. The Corker thing was distinctive because that's what he's going to need. He can't win a general election if he's fighting a two-front war every time he opens his mouth.
Well, and I think that is what's going to happen in a lot of cases, because the truth is, some of it is reflexive. Some of the criticism of Trump, that he's a stupid person, that he's an unserious person, you know, you can make an argument for those cases. People will make arguments on the merits on those cases, but the bottom line is that on many issues of policy, people like Lindsey Graham disagree with Donald Trump. It's not just they hate. It's not just they hate him. They think he's wrong. They think he's wrong.
I'll say one more thing quickly. Reporters today, some check their objectivity at the door. The guy's going to be probably the major party nominee, and they mocked the speech in a way that was unprofessional.
I do not think you disagree, though, that all major party nominees deserve intense scrutiny from the press, skepticism on all fronts.
Every one of them.
And Donald Trump is owed it on the basis of the fact that he hasn't given a foreign policy speech before of any dimension.
Agreed.
Got to be tough with that. All right.
Agreed.
When we come back, the Trump is defending his comment that Hillary Clinton is doing better in this election because of her gender. Actually, he says she was only doing well because of her gender. But will that actually hurt him? That's the question. We'll talk about that and more after these words from our sponsors. Welcome back. With all the news today, it's easy to forget that last night was huge for the frontrunners in both parties. Let's start with Hillary Clinton. She won 4 out of the 5 states that voted yesterday, gaining momentum as the final stretch of this campaign nears and increasing her delegate lead over Bernie Sanders, who today said in an interview with the New York Times that he's planning to lay off, quote, hundreds of campaign staff members across the country and refocus all of his resources, or most of them, on California. On the Republican side, Donald Trump rolled a Yahtzee last night. He didn't just win all 5 states, he won them with margins well above what we and others projected as the high end of what he might rack up. That led Florida Governor Rick Scott to call on the Stop Trump campaign to basically stop. On Facebook today, Governor Scott wrote, quote, "If the anti-Trump groups don't stop now, their efforts will be nothing more than a contribution to the Clinton campaign," end quote. Mark, so where do these victories leave the Democratic and Republican races?
Neither Clinton nor Trump can secure the nominations before the last day of voting, but Clinton got what she wanted, which is the press is now saying emphatically the reality of the math is it's over. Her path now, her conduct is going to be much easier. Sanders saying he's laying people off only helps her. That Clinton couldn't have done any better, and Trump couldn't have done any better in terms of the narrative as well. He called himself the presumptive nominee last night. Rick Scott is on the cutting edge here, but Republicans now are starting to say it's over unless he loses Indiana. But Trump is one win away from being able to say to people, end this thing now.
Presidential race is about math and about momentum. In terms of math, Hillary Clinton had a mostly insurmountable lead already. She extended it. Bernie Sanders not going to win the pledged delegates. Hillary Clinton has to win about 42% of the remaining ones. She's going to win 42% of the remaining delegates. It's over on the Democratic side, effectively, unless there's some political lightning bolt. And momentum-wise, she has it all. On the Trump side, as you said, it's all Indiana now. It's largely over, and I think many Republicans accept that. There's one last shred of hope for the anti-Trump people, and that's to win Indiana. They get to live to fight another day, but that's it.
Trump on Morning Joe this morning dangled fundraising in front of RNC members that's going to help him close this thing out again if he can win Indiana. All right, the speech wasn't the only thing that Donald Trump is getting flack for today, the foreign policy speech. By now, you've probably heard that part of his victory speech last night at Trump Tower when he said Hillary Clinton is only doing well in this race because of her gender. We're going to show you that soundbite, even though you may have already seen it, because we have a hunch you're going to be hearing an awful lot about it over the coming months if Trump does become the Republican nominee. As Warner Wolf would say, let's go to the videotape.
Well, I think the only card she has is the woman's card. She's got nothing else going. And frankly, if Hillary Clinton were a man, I don't think she'd get 5% of the vote. The only thing she's got going is the woman's card. And the beautiful thing is women don't like her, okay? And look how well I did with women tonight, okay?
So, John, Trump defended himself for that comment on the morning shows, but lots of people are raising their eyebrows. I was in the room last night when he said it. It struck me as something that would be pounced on. Is this going to hurt him?
Yes, it's going to hurt him. It's going to hurt him in the general election if he continues down this path. Not just the comment, but the fact that he seems blind to the huge problem he has with female voters in this country. That was not the comment of someone who understands that he's right now polling with 70% disapproval among women in the country, and that he has to fix that problem if he's ever going to be the president of the United States. That if it did nothing else, did nothing to help that problem, and only made it worse.
Same problem Bernie Sanders has. You can take on Hillary Clinton on a lot of fronts in a general election or in a nomination fight. But to question her qualifications, given that she was Secretary of State,
Correct.
First Lady and a Senator from New York, it's just not a winning thing. And when it's done by a man in this context, there's no doubt that it's going to rub a lot of women and men the wrong way for the guy to say she's basically not qualified except by virtue of being a woman. Big mistake politically.
That kind of comment sounds off-key and at a minimum and offensive at a maximum to most women in the country. And as Stuart Stevens pointed out last night, Mitt Romney won with females in 2012, still got shellacked. Donald Trump has got to fix this problem.
Yep.
All right, when we come back, our friends from Purple Strategies, Alex Castellanos and Steve McMahon, join us here right on this set right after this.
Joining us now, two guys we call the Purple People. Democratic strategist Steve McMahon and his Republican colleague and friend, Alex Castellanos. Together, they're founding partners of Purple Strategies, our polling partners, and two people who know a lot about politics. Gentlemen, thank you for coming in. Alex, start with you. You've had a psychically troubled relationship with the prospect of Donald Trump being your nominee. Are you now fully accepting the reality that that's what's going to happen, or are you holding out hope something could intercede?
I bowed before President Trump.
Yeah.
No, I think that's
done deal.
He had this thing won in March.
Yeah.
He nearly lost it. He's won it back. And I think you're seeing the Republican Party become a lot more comfortable. The price now of denying Trump the nomination is so clear to everyone in the party. That would be so destructive that that's part of the bandwagon effect now that's rallying the party around him. It's now not just about whether he's earned the nomination, it's would it destroy the party to deny it to him.
Is there anything Trump's done during this period Alex talked about where he's solidified his hold on this? Is there anything he's done that you've looked at and said, that surprises me, that is pretty deft, that is a guy who could win a general election?
Well, I don't know if I think he's gotten a little bit more deft. He's gotten a little bit more presidential at moments. I think this Corey Lewandowski thing that goes back and forth between, is Paul Manafort making him more presidential, or is Corey Lewandowski letting him sort of revert to his old self, is an interesting one. Every time he sort of puts the flags up and acts presidential, even a little bit, you can start to see a candidate that is evolving and perhaps maturing. But then he goes off like he did half the time last night, and he sort of seems to regress. I think if he runs a temper tantrum campaign, he's going to get destroyed. And I think if he runs a really good campaign, he's going to get beat.
I think Hillary Clinton has never run against anyone with 10 arms and 8 legs like Donald Trump.
That's true.
And I think the odds of Donald Trump winning a general election, winning a general election, are better than 50-50.
So just tell me about what happened today with Ted Cruz and putting Carly Fiorina on the ticket. What do you think about that?
Oh, I think it was a clever strategy by Ted Cruz to get her delegate. I don't think she has any. I have no idea. It makes absolutely no sense. I mean, this is the guy who asked the girl to the prom. She said no, and he's still making dinner reservations. It doesn't do anything, but I think demonstrate how irrelevant he is becoming. Cruz had value in this process for one reason. He was an alternative to Trump. Nobody actually wanted Cruz. But it turns out that when Trump either succeeds or fails, you now don't need Ted Cruz. So he is now completely irrelevant in the process.
I think it's sort of, he got a little bit jealous because he heard John Kasich was actually interviewing and having vice presidential candidates vetted, and Cruz didn't want to lose anything to Kasich, not even the vice presidential sweepstakes. So he moved quickly and decisively.
But so help hurt or just a wash? Does it matter?
Does it help her? Well,
no, help or hurt. Help him, hurt him, or is it a wash?
I think he's so irrelevant at this point that it actually probably hurts him a little bit because it reinforces the fact that he's desperate and irrelevant. I don't think it does any good.
So you guys both agree that Trump is going to be the nominee. There's no question in your mind. There's no way that he's going to get to 1237 by.
I've been hoping. I've been hoping
8th.
For some time this would be the case, and Alex has been fearing it.
Sure. No, look, this year the impossible's already happened, so who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? Could he lose Indiana? Could a meteor hit? Something? Yes. There's a chance he falls not only a handful of votes short, then he still gets the nomination. Maybe they steal 200 votes from him and deny him the nomination and the party blows up. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it looks like Donald Trump's going to be the Republican nominee.
Rick Scott, John read his statement earlier, said stop the Stop Trump movement because everything you do now is just helping Hillary Clinton. Do you think either before Indiana or after if Trump wins that will become more of a consensus view in the party?
It's becoming the consensus view in the party. I think you're right. The governor of Florida is kind of at the leading edge of that debate. But it's beginning to sink in that, again, that the cost of denying Trump the nomination is chaos in the party. Look, this is like the political parties are like the stock market. They can go up or down, but the one thing you want to avoid is uncertainty. And right now, the Republican Party wants to bring some certainty to this process. That's the trend for the next 2 months.
Alex talks about the cost of the Republican Party of denying the nomination to Trump, which I completely agree with in terms of like what will happen with the Trump supporters kind of walking out of the convention angry. On the other hand, a lot of Alex's friends, a lot of mainstream Republicans are very, very worried about what happens if Trump is the nominee. Does the Senate go under? Does the House of Representatives lose 30 seats and go Democratic? I say go, 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 Donald, because I think all those things could happen. But I think a lot of Alex's friends are pretty deeply concerned about that.
But if I were a Senate candidate, a Republican Senate candidate in a swing state, and I had a choice of having Ted Cruz above me on the ticket or Donald Trump, I'd have a much better shot of being my own person, my own candidate, under Donald Trump. Ted Cruz is the narrowest possible expression of being a Republican, but he is a Republican. Donald Trump is the circus has come to town. Hey, I'm not with the circus. Look at me.
Hold on 1 second. Alex and Steve, thanks so much. Stand by. After this break, we'll be talking more about the Democrats after this.
Did see Jeb though.
We're back with our Purple Strategies partners, Democratic strategist Steve McMahon and Republican most interesting man in the world, Alex Castellanos. Guys, let's talk about Democrats here.
Okay.
We all, I assume, agree Hillary Clinton's going to be the nominee. Her big challenge, it seems to me, going forward is how does she get those Sanders voters to like her? Alex, what do you think she has to do? What can she do to make that happen?
She's got one great card in her pocket. That's us, Republicans. If we can't unite the Democratic Party behind Hillary Clinton, nothing will. So I'm sure she's going to head in that direction. But there's no passion there for her. This is a stay-home election for the Democratic Party. What can she do? Put somebody on the ticket like Elizabeth Warren, square the Democratic Party's strength. If she tries to reach across the middle with a VP pick, it could be passionless. So I don't know what she can do other than move to Vermont and live on a commune.
Point to Donald Trump and say, look at him, look at him, look at him.
That's
which is exactly what she started to do last night. And look at Bernie, and look at all the very important issues he raised. Look at the great campaign that he ran. Look at all the people he brought into the process, and let's all get back together. I mean, she's already starting this.
But I think it just underestimates the extent, something we're familiar with just because you listen to the Sanders supporters. There's a lot of them who really don't like her. I mean, who really are not, and they understand Donald Trump. They don't want Donald Trump to be president. But what is the thing she can say to them to actually get them passionately behind her?
Well, she could say, I'm a Democrat. And you look, in these primary campaigns, the differences between the candidates are usually so small that they're exaggerated and the fights become huge and the passions are very strong. And people say the kinds of things that frankly, Sanders supporters are saying about Hillary Clinton right now. But at the end of the day, they're going to have a choice. And the choice is either going to be Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump or not showing up. Hopefully they'll show up, but they won't vote for Donald Trump.
There are two camps in the Democratic Party, right? There are ones who say, like you, Trump might come close, but Trump can't win. And some who say, be careful, Trump is a wild card and scrambles things. Are those groups, would you say, amongst elite Democrats, strategists, office holders, are those roughly equal, or more people in your camp who say Trump could run a flawless campaign and can't win?
I'm not sure that I'm quite in that camp.
Yeah.
I think that Hillary Clinton has an enormous advantage, not just the 241 electoral college votes that she starts with probably, but just the fact she's running against Trump. I do think there's a strain of Donald Trump's argument that is very similar to Bernie Sanders in a couple of respects. One is, you're a victim and you're getting screwed, you're working harder, you're making less, and someone's taking your money.
I understand, but
right?
break down the Democratic Party elite for me. Are you guys 80-20 that this is a tough race, not a tough race?
I think it's probably more like 60-40. There are a lot of people out there who are saying he's probably not going to get any lift, but to assume that he won't and to plan like he won't is crazy. And I don't think the Clinton campaign is crazy.
You have always thought, even as people you didn't think would be strong general election candidates, that she's so weak that she's beatable. Does anything else have to happen? Do we need an email indictment or something? Or you think on the current trajectory, Donald Trump can beat her?
I don't think she knows who she is.
I understand.
She's had one card in this.
But you think
she has no campaign?
You think if there are no big intervening events, Trump can beat her?
Yes. I don't think anything comes naturally to her. She doesn't believe in anything. She's not passionate about anything. Therefore, she doesn't give people anything to be passionate about in her campaign. She's got one card that connects her to the future of this country, and it's we've never had a woman president. And even that seems somehow to ring inauthentically for her. So I don't see...
I don't know what that means.
I don't either. Well, I'm not going to go there.
The only thing I think she can do to inject passion into her campaign is hug Bernie Sanders, pick an Elizabeth Warren, but that's not what she needs to do to go across the middle. So I think you have this forced, stiff, inauthentic candidate that doesn't inspire the base in a general election in a Democratic Party and has no message to reach across the middle. I think she's eminently beatable in a general election.
Guys, I'd like to hang out at your office with you guys sometimes.
We do have fun. You guys come over. Purple Strategies is a great place to hang.
Just whack it along. Right. Alex Castellanos, Steve McMahon, thank you. Coming up, a former American ambassador dives into Donald Trump's big foreign policy speech. And if you're watching us here in Washington, D.C., you can listen to us as well on the radio at Bloomberg 99.1 FM. We'll be right back.
And talk more about Donald Trump's foreign policy speech that he gave earlier today here in Washington. We heard a lot from the Republican frontrunner about what he says is wrong with America's current foreign policy and something thematic about what do we do to fix America's standing in the world. Here's a quick highlight reel of some of his ideas and positions.
The countries we are defending must pay for the cost of this defense. And if not, the U.S. must be prepared to let these countries defend themselves. We have no choice. Our president has allowed China to continue its economic assault on American jobs and wealth, refusing to enforce trade deals and apply leverage on China necessarily to rein in North Korea. I believe an easing of tensions and improved relations with Russia from a position of strength only is possible, absolutely possible. And then there's ISIS. I have a simple message for them. Their days are numbered. I won't tell them where, and I won't tell them how. We must as a nation, be more unpredictable.
All right, a little bit of more from that speech. Joining us now to talk about what Trump said today, Stuart Holliday, the former U.S. ambassador for special political affairs at the United Nations during Bush 43's administration. Ambassador, thank you for joining us.
It's good to be here.
Let's start with that last point, which Trump has said before, and the Clinton people jump all over this notion that being unpredictable is good. Trump, for instance, will say, President Obama announces that we're sending 50 advisors into a certain place. He's like, we shouldn't be giving stuff away. Is there a notion in respectable foreign policy circles that unpredictability in the commander-in-chief is a good idea?
I think there's a difference between unpredictable behavior versus keeping your cards close in terms of how you carry out a certain policy. As you know, I mean, Nixon surprised everybody with the normalization of relations with China. That wasn't unpredictable in the sense that it made sense in our national interest, but it was a surprise. And I think that he's looking at Vladimir Putin and the way he's sort of gamed and gotten an edge on certain regional issues, and he's seen us sort of plodding along and not really being nimble.
There are a lot of people who look at Trump and some of the criticisms of the speech today is he's just an unserious person. Do you hear a serious person there in that speech about world affairs?
I actually do. I think that what I see is somebody who believes that American leadership in the world has somewhat been eroded. That's not an uncommon theme among Republican candidates. Right. But I also see this linkage, interestingly enough, between economic diplomacy and leverage. And there's always been the effort to engage diplomatically over here, and then maybe you have sanctions, but you really don't do anything to link economic consequences. And he's a negotiator, and so what I think he's thinking is that he can use economic leverage to achieve political and diplomatic outcomes, which is hard.
Some people look at what he's proposing. We'll make allies pay more. Well, Reagan tried to make allies pay more, and Clinton tried to make allies. Is there a reason to think that if a guy comes in totally iconoclastic, not beholden to the State Department and the normal ways of doing things, that actually stuff like that could change under President Trump?
Well, I think we saw with President Obama's Cairo speech, a president can set an agenda by where the president goes and where the president spends time. Invariably, the presidency is a powerful bully pulpit. If the president makes burden sharing, as President Reagan called it, the most important thing in his presidency, it's going to get a lot of attention. It's going to get a lot of leverage. The question to me is not, do you chuck somebody out of NATO because they can't pay their bill, but how do you link what they pay for to their own national security? The refugee crisis, the Middle East. Is there a smart way to get them over the 2%, which there are only 3 or 4 of those countries actually paying?
It seems to me that what strikes me about the speech, there's a lot of apparent inconsistencies. Places where he seems aggressive, places where he seems restrained, places where he seems to be hawkish, other places where he seems to be less so. Is there a worldview here, like an identifiable realist, idealist, isolationist, neocon? What is is there an animating thing here that you can identify?
I mean, I think it's a realist. I mean, he sounds to me like somebody who views democracy promotion and sort of idealistic. You talk about universal values versus American interest. That sort of takes me back to the 70s in terms of how we viewed the world. I also did hear inconsistencies. I mean, I think it's tough to have it all ways. Be robust militarily but not intervene. I did think that the time frame he sort of laid out for prosecuting the struggle against Islamic extremism indicates that he's got this view of this as the new communist threat. He used containment, the term containment, against this. And so building and putting the resources behind that is going to be important, as well as getting everybody to help foot the bill.
Less than 30 seconds. He didn't take questions from us after the event. If you could ask him one question now about his foreign policy, national security views, what would it be?
I think it's when he would decide to use military force. I mean, he left that kind of up in the air. We talk about American national interest. Our allies, we have treaty obligations, South China Sea, South Korea. When would we act and under what circumstances? That's invariably the highest responsibility of a president, and we don't know exactly where he stands on that one.
Right. Although I'll say we don't really know it for anybody else who's running at this point either.
That's right.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you. Coming up next,
thank you.
Who's Your State Preview with Dan Balz, The Washington Post, and our colleague Jennifer Jacobs right after this.
Here to talk more about the upcoming Indiana primary that's next week, and a whole lot more than that, are Jennifer Jacobs, our national politics reporter from Bloomberg Politics, and of course the great Dan Balz, chief correspondent, apparently for everything at the Washington Post. Guys, we teased the Indiana primary right at the top there, so let's just talk about that to begin with. Dan, is this Republican race over, or is there still some daylight for the Never Trump forces if Ted Cruz can win Indiana?
Well, if he wins Indiana and he does very, very well in California, you could make the argument that there's still some daylight there left for him to, seize on. Every delegate denied Trump is a delegate short of 1237, so it's not insignificant. But, after what happened last night, I mean, and Trump far exceeded, I think, everybody's estimates of what his delegate number was likely to be. It's awfully tough. It's awfully tough at this point.
Trump climbed out of bed this morning, the king of the world. He was calling himself the presumptive nominee. He was on top of everything, and then Cruz came in and stepped on him in a bunch of different ways today.
What do you think explains how well Donald Trump did last night?
Oh, it's just the Northeast. He's just well known out here, and this is just not Cruz territory. That's the bottom line.
Talk about Veep Stakes selection of Fiorina.
Yeah.
But you believe that may not have been Cruz's first choice?
Well, I do think that some of his people wanted him to check in with Marco Rubio and really try to woo Marco Rubio onto the ticket just to get those delegates. I do think that's true. But I did talk to a lot of Republicans today who think that the Carly choice was very smart. She's a she. He played the woman card, right? When Trump was frustrated with Hillary Clinton for playing the woman card, now Cruz comes out and plays the woman card. She's popular with donors. She's really well liked in her home state of California. She didn't talk about California on the stump very much when she was campaigning, but she is from California. She's well liked there. She did well in a primary out there. She outperformed in voter registration and in the general election in that. And so there are many different benefits for it. And probably the biggest thing was she helped Cruz step all over Donald Trump's big day today, which could have been one of the most important days for him in the campaign.
Right. So, Dan, we're here at the end of Wednesday, the primary, Republican primary, Democrat primary Tuesday. What do you expect to happen between now and then? No debates. So what happens to determine who gets the leg up there?
Press coverage, in part, the effectiveness of the two candidates and spending time in that state, and in a sense, this question of whether there will be a consolidation within the Republican Party, slowly perhaps, or grudgingly, around Donald Trump as the likely nominee, as the presumptive nominee.
Trump said last night, I think he keeps saying, he said it to us, which is, all these people call me, who attack me publicly, but they want to be on board. And he refuses to reveal who they are. Do you know of anybody like that? Do you think Trump's telling the truth about that?
Well, I'm sure there are people calling who are not publicly on board with him, but I'm not sure that they are, on board with him. No doubt he's getting a lot of attention from people. I was struck by the statement that Senator Corker put out today, the Foreign Relations Committee, about the speech. It was a very measured comment. It took seriously what Donald Trump was doing. It was a very establishment Republican, in a sense, embracing Trump for giving a serious speech. I think that's the kind of indication you're seeing, that people are beginning to kind of wrap their heads around the idea that this candidate may be or is likely to be our nominee, and we need to come to terms with that.
Right. Jennifer, there's by all indications, and I know you know something about this, there's still a lot of turmoil in Donald Trump's world within the Trump campaign. Sort of unusual. Usually losing campaigns have a lot of turmoil and winning campaigns have a lot of happiness. This campaign is a winning campaign where the turmoil seems to get greater the more he wins. So what's that about, and how big a threat is that to his enterprise going forward?
There's some us versus them tensions between the old guard who have been with him and say that, over 16 months there was very little infighting. There wasn't all these news stories about campaign and palace intrigue and Trump Towers. And now for the last 3 weeks since Paul Manafort's hire, there has just been an endless stream of leaks to the press and just all sorts of focus on process and the campaign's internal, health or well-being. So it is a fractured campaign. I think they're starting to learn how to get along with each other and respect each other. I really do. So we'll see if that makes a difference. It's the Manafortization of the Trump campaign, and we'll see if that succeeds in helping. Some people have said, listen, if Trump just had waited a few weeks until after he won these primaries, he might not have needed to hire Paul Manafort. He could have been just fine with his existing cast of characters. We'll see if that's true.
I asked Donald Trump this morning on television about the respective roles of Corey Corey Lewandowski and Paul Manafort, and he said they have different roles. That's basically what he said. He didn't explain any more detail. You've covered a lot of
accurate statement.
You've covered a lot of campaigns. What's your sense of what the dynamics there are and how debilitating it could be if that continues to be a source of tension going forward?
I think there's inevitably going to be tension throughout this campaign because, in a sense, Corey Lewandowski represents Donald Trump on the stump. And Paul Manafort represents the Donald Trump who, in one way or another, has to reach some kind of accord with the establishment part of the Republican Party. They want to have a smooth convention. He wants control over that convention if he can prove that he's got 1,237 delegates. At the same time, when Paul Manafort goes into a closed meeting in Florida and suggests that Donald Trump is going to, in some fundamental way, change his style, Donald Trump rebels against that. So I think he's playing both sides. I think he has to play both sides. I don't see any way that they can avoid the tension they have. Certainly they can learn to live with one another. I mean, these are people who've never worked together in any real way. They're going to have to learn to do that. But I think that it's an inherent tension in what his candidacy is right now.
And it's interesting to see the reaction from Republicans who are leery of Donald Trump, and they're hearing Trump say one thing out on the stump, and then, you know, Rick Wiley and Paul Manafort are saying very different things behind closed doors, and they're not quite sure which to believe.
Some nominees emerge from their nomination battles stronger, some weaker. Is Hillary Clinton on track, whenever and however this ends, to emerge stronger as a candidate for the general election based on what's gone on with Sanders?
Not yet, no. And I think Sanders has exacerbated the problem that she had. I mean, if you look at the recent polls on her image, she's got problems that she's got to deal with. I mean, the blessing she has is that Donald Trump's problems are significantly greater in terms of the groups or the constituencies where his numbers are underwater. But she does need to do something about that. On the other hand, we're in an environment in which the fact that somebody has, you know, higher negatives than positives is not necessarily disqualifying. I mean, this is the nature of the kind of where politics is right now. People look at politicians and they don't look at them very favorably. You know, Bernie Sanders has favorable numbers, but they're marginally favorable. Right. So I think but again, I think it's something that the Clinton campaign can't take for granted. I mean, there is going to be a tendency for them to look at Donald Trump and say, this guy is so eminently beatable that if we just kind of play our regular game, we're fine. But I don't think that solves her problems or sets her up, if in fact she wins the presidency, to be as effective a president as she'll want to be.
Lots of olive branches last night in her victory speech, you know, just talking a lot about Sanders' issues, specifically mentioning him by name and saying she applauds him, whereas in his speech, he didn't really ever mention her by name and didn't even really talk about the election at all. Hearing a lot on social media from Sanders backers who are really heartbroken to hear the news that he's going to be laying off staff. So that'll be interesting to see how Hillary Clinton embraces some of those people who are really feeling really distraught at that news that this campaign could be falling apart.
Well, that is a question, Dan. Let me ask you this. You know, you I know have a lot of sources in the Clinton campaign. How big a challenge did they think putting the party back together is from their point of view, and getting the Sanders voters to be enthusiastically for her?
You know, 2 weeks ago I would have said, or on the eve of the New York primary, I would have said they recognize that it's going to be harder than they originally thought. I think after last night, given the size of her victory and kind of the signals we're getting out of Bernie Sanders in the campaign, it might be a little less difficult. But you know, this is not entirely unusual within a Democratic contest. We've seen splits between the progressive left and the establishment center or center left. They usually come together reasonably well. Donald Trump will be a big unifier for the Democrats in the same way that Hillary Clinton will be a unifier on the Republican side. So I would say they're going to be able to do it, but we don't know what the bottom lines are for Bernie Sanders and what he wants out of the convention, what he wants out of the platform. And there's certainly a group of Sanders voters who will be harder to bring around. I mean, they are there for Bernie Sanders. She'll have trouble with them.
Is there? All right, we got to go. I've got another question, but I'm going to save it for a future episode. Jennifer Jacobs, thank you. Dan, thank you.
You guys are both awesome. And we'll be right back. You got to check out BloombergPolitics.com for all the latest 2016 campaign coverage, including a fascinating story today by Craig Giammona about how a rival brand of Oreo cookies that is trying to benefit from Donald Trump's success.
Again, who isn't? Coming up on Bloomberg TV, Emily Chang sits down with Revolution CEO, the great Steve Case. Until tomorrow, we'll be back in New York City. There's lots going on in the wake of today's news. We'll have it all for you here tomorrow on With All Due Respect. Thanks for watching. Sayonara.